host of the Tackle Box here on Regan's Corner Sports Podcast. I will be covering college football for right now, mainly SEC because I am in Arkansas, so you know that here in the South, we are all about the South, we're all about the SEC. I will try to touch a little bit on everything else that's going on in the football world, at least college, but I'm going to try to focus just on SEC for a little bit. So yeah, we're just going to talk football. I know it's just now getting started, so hopefully we can find some things to talk about. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am 23 years old. Born and raised in Arkansas. I went to the University of Arkansas. I am a Razorback. Woo pig. I love all things sports. I played softball, basketball, cheered all throughout school. My parents, my whole family loves the Razorbacks, and so if I'm a little biased, don't be surprised if I talk a little bit more about the Razorbacks throughout this podcast. That's probably pretty normal considering we don't have any professional teams here, so it's like the Razorbacks or our Cowboys or our Chiefs. So I currently work as a news producer for Channel 7 News here in Little Rock. It is the #1 station across the state, so very blessed with that opportunity. I've gotten to shadow, if you're from Arkansas, you know who Steve Sullivan is, so I've been able to work with Steve a little bit, and that's just been absolutely amazing, especially as a sports person. And Kyle Deckelbaum, he is our other sports guy. He's great. They've given me a lot of opportunities to work within the news setting, but with sports as well. So it's been pretty awesome. So I'm definitely blessed. I have a great boyfriend, great family. Here's one of my 2 dogs. This is Zeus. He's the oldest one, and then I've got Zeke. They're both golden retrievers. So life stays pretty busy around here. I go to the games as much as I can. We're about 3 hours from Fayetteville, so kind of just depends on what the weekend plans are, and sometimes we're like, okay, let's go, let's pack and go the Friday before. So being able to be pretty close to the only professional team here in Arkansas is pretty good. So it brings a lot of joy to me, joy to my family, and it's just something that we all like to do. So the first thing, I've got my notes, don't judge. The first thing I want to kind of dive into on this first episode is college football is just getting started. Just kind of do a recap of who some have already played, some of the more anticipated matchups for Saturday's games. So let's just get right into it. Some of the SEC teams that have already played before Saturday: Vandy and Tennessee. They both won. Vanderbilt's kind of the low man on the totem pole when it comes to at least football in the SEC. Baseball, they're always usually pretty good. But they beat Hawaii 63-10, and then Tennessee demolished Ball State 59-10. So good start for the SEC, at least for now. Missouri also won 52-24 against Louisiana Tech on Thursday. Just want to preview some of the games for Saturday that I think will be some pretty good indicators of how the rest of the season might go. I know that Texas A&M is ranked 6th. Somehow this always happens, but they did have, the highest rated recruiting class ever. So they play Sam Houston Saturday, so I'm kind of interested to see how that will play out for them for the rest of the season. I know that having him ranked that high in the beginning of the year and having such a highly rated recruiting class is going to be a big start for them, and people are going to expect them to do really well. So I'm interested to see how that plays out for the rest of the year for them. I mean, hopefully Arkansas beats A&M at AT&T Stadium, but that's pretty cool for them for the recruiting class. And I'm also interested to see how many of those recruits end up playing this year. We did a segment on Thursday previewing the Hogs and everything that they're expected for this season. And one of the things that head coach Sam Pittman said was that he is not going to play freshmen because he has to. He's going to play them because he wants to. So I think that might be some of the things that we could look at with Texas A&M, in the sense that if they do have such a highly rated recruiting class, how is this going to end up playing out for them the rest of the year? Are those recruits going to end up getting playing time, or is it just going to be, they're going to stick with the veterans? So 21 ranked Ole Miss plays Troy Saturday. They have 16 additions from the transfer portal. So, transfer portal with all this new stuff, transfer portal has become really popular. So I guess all of those guys who didn't get the playing time that they maybe wanted, who ended up entering the portal, transferring, could be good for Ole Miss. Some of those guys may not have any experience, but some might. And they've got 15 new recruits. So, here in Arkansas, we don't particularly like Ole Miss, but they're ranked 21st. Another game that I am actually really interested to see how it's going to play out will be South Carolina versus Georgia State. Now, South Carolina's new quarterback, Spencer Rattler, was the quarterback at Oklahoma, but he was ultimately benched during their, I believe, game against Texas, where Caleb Williams, true freshman Caleb Williams, came in and basically took over the spot for Rattler. He was projected number 1 pick in 2021. So his last season was kind of interesting. He had a lot of hype built around him, and now it's kind of like, okay, you're at a new team, kind of starting over from everything that you built at Oklahoma. So I'm interested to see how he'll perform as a member of the South Carolina team. So, of course, you've got Alabama playing Utah State, number 1 team. Are we surprised? Alabama just absolutely dominates every year, and they just keep getting better and better. I don't know how many times you have to ask, but is this going to be, Nick Saban's best team ever? I don't know. They dominate every year, and they're playing Utah State Saturday. So I'm interested to see, what new things that Saban will bring, what his, built, offense will look like, their experience, their, what new things that they're going to bring to the table. I've got on here, what will there be more of, Utah State points or Nick Saban sideline explosions? I'm going to go with sideline explosions. Even Saban on the first game of the year is not going to have any excuses for any kind of mess-ups, even though it is the first game of the year. He expects perfection day one, and I think that that's honestly what makes him one of the best, is that he doesn't take any excuses, regardless of if you're in your last game or if you're in your first game of the season. He expects perfection, and honestly, that's probably worked out for him, considering. Another game that I think is going to be a pretty big indicator of how their season is going to go is going to be this first LSU game. Ed Orgeron is no longer the coach. Notre Dame's Brian Kelly is now the head coach. It'll be his first game as head coach at LSU. Big game in Death Valley on Sunday. With that game, one of the biggest things that people have been asking is who's going to be, their starting quarterback. And Brian Kelly says there is no, 1 and 2. There's a 1A and a 1B. And according to this article, it says that it's come down to Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier. Like I said, Kelly said that the competition between the two quarterbacks is not a 1 and 2, it's a 1A, 1B type situation. So it's probably going to come down to a game time decision based on, Florida State's defense and what they're, planning on doing and who's going to end up being the best for them. I do know that Kelly has been keeping it kind of locked up who he's planning on starting, but that's probably because he doesn't want Florida State to know his next move. So he's keeping that kind of locked away until game time. So for us, it'll look like a game time decision, but Kelly's already got his plan, and I'm just wondering, how do you, as Florida State, how do you plan for, two different sets of quarterbacks, and how do you plan for two different quarterbacks? How do you, look at their two different skill sets? And that's the $1 million question: is how do you know what to prepare for if you don't know who's starting? Another big game, Georgia and Oregon, top 25 matchup. Georgia, they've got a lot of people who went to the draft this past draft, so I'm wondering, how can they, or at least for their defense, how can they possibly repeat a national championship if they've kind of had to start over with their defense. And Dan Lanning, the new head coach at Oregon, was actually Georgia's defensive coordinator, which honestly is, as an Arkansan, I kind of get that. Sam Pittman came from Georgia, and the moment probably all of the people from home that know that I'm doing this have been waiting for. Arkansas versus Cincinnati. 19th, Arkansas, 23, Cincinnati. I'm very excited for this game. I think this is going to really be a big indicator on how the rest of the season will go for both teams. For Cincinnati, playing Arkansas your first game, it's like a bowl game for them. Like I said, we did that special on Thursday, talking about previewing the game, and I think one of the best things that was mentioned was, if Cincinnati wins this game compared to the rest of their season, this is a huge indicator of how the rest of their season's going to go. If they can come out of Fayetteville with a win, they'll go undefeated the rest of the season. The rest of their lineup, the rest of their schedule is kind of a cakewalk compared to playing Arkansas. So I'm wondering, if the difference between if Cincinnati wins versus if Arkansas wins, the recognition that both teams are going to get, since, like I said, if Cincinnati wins, that's going to be a big deal for them. But I also think if Arkansas wins, it's also a big deal for Arkansas. And so I think it is a pretty big indicator. You've got a top 25 matchup, and I'm kind of wondering how recognized Arkansas will be if they do win against Cincinnati. Are the polls going to recognize it? Is the media going to recognize it? Is it going to be as big of a deal to, everybody if Arkansas wins, or is it kind of expected at this point? That's always kind of been the I guess the thing with Arkansas is if we do get these big wins, it's like, okay, well, you should. But I'm also like, we haven't been very good in the past few years. So big games for us are a big deal. And I'm ready for Arkansas to get that recognition. But I also like the fact that, some people do expect us to, let me quote Lee Corso. He says, Arkansas will blast Cincinnati. So, I'm ready for Arkansas to have that recognition. I'm ready for them to have the respect that they should, especially with Sam Pittman leading them. Another big question that's been circling is if Arkansas is going to, have a 10-win season. And I think that it kind of pushes the reality of things right now. We are still kind of rebuilding and regrouping from a really bad run the last few years. Sam Pittman has just come in and cleaned house basically, and he's done a great job of building our confidence back up, I think, with a lot of the guys on the team. I think the Alabama, Mississippi State, and BYU run is going to be pretty difficult. I am excited as an Arkansas fan for Alabama to be playing in Fayetteville. I mean, we gave them a run for their money last year in Tuscaloosa, so I think that I don't think Alabama will underestimate us at all, or I should say won't underestimate Arkansas. I know that Nick Saban prepares the same for every game, whether it's, a nobody team or a Georgia or an Arkansas. So I know that he'll be prepared, but I also think we'll be prepared. I think that with the game Saturday against Cincinnati, KJ Jefferson is going to set the tone. I think the way he comes out and performs first snap is going to be a big indicator on how that entire game is going to go. I mean, we've got, for the first time in a long time, a franchise quarterback who people love to see succeed and people want to see succeed. And I mean, he's a dual threat quarterback, and Sam Pittman has said that he's finally starting to look like a dual threat quarterback. He's faster, he's quicker, he's making moves, and he's reacting faster. His mental is faster, and he's just I mean, he's got a freaking cannon for an arm. So I have no doubt that KJ Jefferson will lead Arkansas to a win on Saturday. Go Hogs. So I had the opportunity to go with my coworker Steve Sullivan to something that's put on in Little Rock every football season, or here recently every football season, the Little Rock Touchdown Club. It's put on by David Basil. He is the host, or one of the hosts, of 103.7 The Buzz. That's if you listen to morning time radio and you like sports in any way, you're listening to The Buzz, at least while you're in Arkansas. So David Basil and some of his other friends and partners put on this Little Rock Touchdown Club. And this week I had the chance to go with Sully to see John Gruden speak. And here's what John had to say about applying pressure or folding under pressure.
Harris, he taught me another valuable lesson. You either feel pressure or you apply pressure. And if you don't know what you're doing in the heat of the battle, you're not going to be able to make the right adjustment. You're not going to be able to make the right coaching point. So before you get up here and start coaching and screaming and giving all this coaching talk, get to the technical details and know what you're talking about.
Thing that John Gruden touched on was the kind of the state of football that we're at right now. He talked about how, it's just not the same as it used to be, and things are a world different than they were when everything first started. So let's hear what he had to say about his concerns with football right now.
I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. It starts with high school grassroots level. That's where I am now. I'm back in Florida trying to help some young players. I think there's a lot of kids that aren't playing anymore, and certain high schools are loaded up. They're good enough to play in the SEC. They got all the good players at one school, and they're beating some teams 80-0. So the competition is not what it used to be. I think people have lost sight about football, what it brings to you as a young man. I learned my leadership, my discipline, my mental and physical toughness. I learned sportsmanship by being on a team. You don't need to be a first-round draft choice or an SEC player to get the benefits of playing. Kids aren't playing anymore, and it really bothers me. And what's going on in college football it's like what's going on in this world right now. I just don't think we're all on the same page. And at some point, whether you're to the left or you're to the right, we got to meet in the middle and get back on the same team. That's where I come from. So,
one thing I liked that John Gruden touched on was kind of the NIL stuff. I think it is just absolutely bizarre that places are paying, millions of dollars for these players, and it's almost kind of taking away from what it's all about. It's all about the game. It's all about, how you build relationships, how you, practice discipline and responsibility and just things like that. Like it's no longer just about, the game and the lessons you learn from the game. It's like, all right, if this guy can pay me more, I'm going to go here instead. Like, it's not about the championships or the honors that you get, I feel like, as much as it's about, the potential opportunities that you have with like money or or things like that. And John touched on that, just saying, it's just absolutely bizarre that you've got so many different teams paying so much money for one person when, other teams have no bodies, and it's like you're just stacking these teams, and there's powerhouse. You have powerhouses like Alabama, and what fun is that? I think that just kind of takes away from the fun of the game and just being able to play. It's not about just being able to play anymore. I don't want to talk too much about political things or anything that's not football, but obviously if I'm going to have John Gruden on here, I need to at least address what happened. Obviously, many people know about the emails that were circulating that he apparently had sent out, like 10 years ago, that were homophobic, racist, transphobic, just a bundle of things, and John had the opportunity to speak on that for the first time ever. He's never talked about it in a I think in a group setting like this before, so he obviously is ashamed of what happened, but I want to let you guys hear what he had to say coming from him. I wanted you guys to be able to form your own opinions on him and everything, but let's hear what he had to say about the situation that he's got going on.
I'm not going to say anything but honest things here. I'm ashamed about what has come about in these emails, and I'll make no excuses for it. It's shameful. But I am a good person. I believe that. I go to church. I've been married for 31 years. I got 3 great boys. I still love football. I've made some mistakes, but I don't think anybody else in here hasn't. And I just ask for forgiveness, and hopefully I get another shot.
So one of the biggest things that I guess has come out of Arkansas football lately is Coach Sam Pittman. A lot of people describe him as blue collar tough, which, I mean, if you're from Arkansas, that really only makes sense. I mean, it's kind of the reality here. He is blue collar tough, and John Gruden spoke a little bit on Coach Pittman and the things that he's doing in Arkansas and how, he's really impressed with, the way that he's handling everything here, especially coming off of disaster seasons before. I won't mention any names, but Chad Morris. He had a lot of rebuilding to do. With Pittman coming from Georgia, I think that only puts us a step above, a lot of other places. I mean, Georgia, powerhouse. Alabama, powerhouse. We got those powerhouse teams, and when you get a coach who, came from a big team like that, as now your head coach, it can only mean good things, at least you would hope. So let's hear what John Gruden had to say about Coach Pittman.
If you know anything about Coach Pittman, he's an offensive line coach as he's coming up the ranks. He didn't just show up at Arkansas and get the big desk. I mean, he's an offensive line coach at Tennessee, offensive line coach at Georgia. And everywhere he's been, the offensive line, it goes back to Frank Broyles. What you see on film is what you coach. And when you watch Tennessee play, it's not a coincidence that 2 or 3 of his guys got drafted. When you watch the Razorbacks, it's not a coincidence that they can run the football and they know what they're doing and they're disciplined. So I think they have a guy that's maybe not as flashy and not, this and that as a guy, as a passing guy or whatever, but I think he's a blue-collar, tough, very, very good fundamental XO guy, and I think he's a good person to respond to him.
As somebody who knows offense, I think that that's a pretty big deal. And I think that's a big indicator on how well your team is going to be coached overall. Like John Gruden, he was a quarterbacks coach, and he knows quarterbacks. He knows how to handle all of that, and then that only helps him as a head coach, further down in his career. So I think that kind of looking and comparing the two, Sam Pittman is honestly the best choice for Arkansas, at least right now. I mean, we have only seen improvement, and when you ask Coach Pittman about the season, it's always positive. There's never any focus on negative things, and I think that I respect that, honestly, because as somebody who's been an Arkansas fan for forever, at least the past few years, have been really tough, and it's been hard not to focus on the negative and everything that went wrong over the last few years. So seeing that positive, the positive take on the season is just really refreshing, and gets me even more excited for, the future and what's to come, even just this season. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was talking about the future of offenses and the way that, teams are executing offense now, and how it's almost watered down because of the rules and everything, and how they're not really allowed to have as many practices or have as much contact in those practices. And John Gruden touched on that and said, that it's almost like you're watching Friday night football, and then the same thing you're seeing on Fridays, you're seeing on Saturdays, and that's also bleeding into what you're seeing on Sundays. Well, I hope that this was at least a bearable first podcast. It's definitely weird sitting here talking to yourself. As I just want to say thanks to everybody who at least tuned in for the first one. I know that things will get better. We're still a work in progress, but as the season ramps up, we'll really be able to kind of dive into at least more Arkansas stuff and specifics that are going on, and hopefully I can continue to entertain. So I'm going to end the podcast on a funny story that John Gruden shared about his interaction and his time with Brett Favre. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you next week.
He has such a thick country accent. I just couldn't see him saying red left switch, Z right, sprint right, GU corner, halfback flat. I mean, I couldn't imagine it. But the funny thing is, when Favre was the quarterback the first 3 years, there was no coach to quarterback walkie-talkie. You know what I'm saying? So I had to signal. I was the signal guy. So Brett had to come up with all the signals so he could remember them. So it was, I never forget this, it was 22, and I would dance. 22 dancer, Z, stutter, go. And he kept telling Holmgren on the sidelines, call 22 dancer, Z, stutter, go, I want to see Gruden dance. I swear. It's like 3rd and 8, we're playing the Vikings. We're not calling that. Shut up, Brett.